The airport terminal fell silent when two security officers dragged the crying woman away from the departure gate. Her light blue dress was wrinkled, her hair was disheveled, and tears streamed down her face as hundreds of travelers stared at her like she was a criminal. She kept trying to explain that there had been a mistake, but nobody wanted to listen. Then, from across the terminal, a billionaire businessman stopped walking. His eyes fell on the passport in the officer's hand, and the color drained from his face. He knew that name. He had spent 20 years believing that woman was gone forever. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can change someone's life and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness for more emotional stories. The woman's name was Clara Bennett, a 42-year-old mother who had spent most of her life trying to stay invisible. She wasn't wearing expensive clothes or carrying designer luggage. Her old suitcase had scratches along the sides, and the handle had been repaired with black tape. She had come to the airport because she was finally leaving the city where she had spent years struggling to survive. Inside her suitcase were a few dresses, some photographs, medical papers belonging to her late mother, and one small envelope she had protected more carefully than anything else. It contained the last letter her mother had ever written to her. Clara had been standing quietly in the security line when an officer stopped her. Something about her passport triggered an alert in the system. The officer asked questions, checked the document several times, and then called another security officer. Clara immediately became frightened because she knew there had been an old problem with her identity records. Years earlier, after losing her home and struggling through a painful divorce, she had been forced to move between temporary addresses. A clerical error had connected her passport information to another person's records. She had tried to correct it many times, but every attempt had ended with another form, another waiting period, and another door closing in her face. When she tried to explain this, the situation became worse. Travelers began watching. Some whispered that she must have done something wrong. The officers told her she needed to come with them for additional questioning. Clara begged them to let her call someone, but her phone had died during the long journey to the airport. When one officer grabbed her arm, panic overwhelmed her. She cried that she hadn't stolen anything and hadn't hurt anyone. She only wanted to catch her flight and start a new life. Across the terminal, a silver-haired man in an expensive navy suit noticed the commotion. His name was Adrian Vale, one of the country's most successful billionaires. He had built a global technology empire from nothing, but despite his wealth, there was one wound money had never been able to heal. 20 years earlier, his younger sister, Amelia, had disappeared after a family tragedy. He had searched for her for years, spent fortunes on investigators, and eventually accepted the painful belief that she was dead. Adrian almost walked past the scene. Then he saw the passport. One of the officers had opened it while checking Clara's identity. Adrian caught sight of the photograph and the name printed beneath it. He stopped so suddenly that his assistant nearly walked into him. His heart began pounding. The woman being dragged away wasn't a stranger. The name on that passport was the same name he had seen on an old photograph kept inside his father's desk for decades. Amelia Vale. Adrian moved toward them, staring at Clara's face. Age had changed her. 20 years had left lines around her eyes and silver in her hair, but he recognized something nobody else could have recognized, a tiny crescent-shaped scar near her eyebrow. When they were children, Amelia had fallen from a bicycle while Adrian was teaching her to ride. He had promised he would never forget that scar. Clara looked up at him through her tears. For a moment, neither of them moved. Adrian asked the officers to wait while he looked again at the passport. Clara was confused by the stranger's reaction. She didn't know why this wealthy man was staring at her as if he had seen a ghost. Then Adrian noticed the small envelope sticking out from her suitcase. On it was handwriting he recognized immediately. Their mother's handwriting. His hands began to shake. Clara opened the envelope and showed him the letter. It was the final proof of everything that had happened 20 years earlier. Their mother had written that Amelia had survived the accident but had been separated from the family during the chaos that followed. She had spent years trying to find her daughter, but illness had taken her before she could finish the search. Adrian could barely breathe. The woman everyone had treated like a nobody was the sister he had mourned for half his life. The security officers quickly realized their mistake. The crowd that had watched Clara with suspicion now watched in stunned silence as Adrian stood beside her, tears filling his eyes. He didn't care who was watching. He simply reached for her hand, as if afraid that if he let go, she might disappear again. Clara had spent 20 years believing that nobody would ever come looking for her. She had survived poverty, loneliness, rejection, and years of being told that her past no longer mattered. But that day, in the middle of a crowded airport, someone finally recognized her. Not because she was wearing expensive clothes. Not because she had money. Not because she had power. Because she mattered. Adrian later used his resources to correct every legal record connected to her identity, but the greatest gift he gave her wasn't money. It was a family photograph placed inside a simple wooden frame. It showed their mother standing between two young children, Adrian and Amelia, smiling beneath the old garden tree. For the first time in decades, Clara didn't feel like a forgotten woman. She felt like she had finally come home. And sometimes, life changes in the strangest places. A person can be judged in seconds, humiliated by strangers, and made to feel worthless, but one act of compassion can remind them that their story isn't over. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes people deserve dignity, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need a little hope. And before you leave, I have one special request. Comment, kindness can change a life, if you believe we should never judge someone by their appearance, clothes, or circumstances. Because Clara wasn't a nobody. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone worth finding, and after 20 painful years, she finally found her way home.